All right, let's jump into this deep dive today. We're tackling something pretty unique, a whole archive of Canibus lyrics. I mean, it's more than just songs, right? It's like getting a look inside his head, how he thinks. And we're going to try to figure out, well, what makes his style so different? And how he uses words to build a whole world, you know?
It is really fascinating to see the big picture this way, not just individual songs, but like the recurring themes and patterns when you look at his whole body of work.
Yeah, and one thing that jumped out at me right away
Hmm.
was how much of his lyrics are about, like, battle. There's so much about war, fighting, weapons. It's intense. Like, you almost want to duck for cover listening to some tracks. You know, when he says stuff like, my lyrics be the atomic rocket, or military arms and bombs strapped to our chest. It's heavy stuff, makes you think. Is this just part of, like, the rap game, or is there something deeper going on?
It definitely makes you wonder where all that intensity comes from, right? Like, is he using war as a metaphor, for struggles he's faced, maybe in his personal life? Or even commenting on the music industry itself, the pressures. It's almost like he's always on guard, ready to defend himself, his art.
And he doesn't hold back on the strong language either. There's even words like jihad, and he talks about tactics that's deadly. So is that just to shock people, get attention? Or is he trying to say something deeper about the world?
I think it's got to be more than just shock value. Artists throughout history have used their work to deal with the tough stuff of their time. So maybe this is Canibus's way of doing the same thing, expressing anger, frustration with the systems he sees.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just like he's not just battling other rappers, but bigger things too, like injustice, inequality. I do wonder, though, how people react to these strong images, especially the ones about violence.
Well, it's important for us to keep in mind as we go through this that we're not endorsing any viewpoint here, just trying to understand his ideas, what he's putting out there.
Exactly. We're here to analyze, not judge. That's what I love about these deep dives, you know. We can get into the details without taking sides.
Absolutely. And speaking of details, have you noticed how often he mixes science with something almost supernatural? It's a really interesting combo.
Oh, yeah. Some of those lines are wild, like nanobacteria burning me up.
Yeah.
And then later he's talking about the Mars mineral samples under my nails. Seriously, where does he come up with this stuff?
It's like he's building his own mythology, Using these two opposite worlds, hard science and the mystery of the unknown. Remember those lines about DNA? Adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine is really what makes my rhymes supreme.
And then he throws in electromagnetic scalar, then something they call a maser. It's like he's trying to, I don't know, unlock the secrets of the universe through his rhymes.
Which makes you wonder, right? Is he searching for answers beyond what we usually think of as knowledge? Is there a deeper meaning he's trying to get at?
It's definitely more than just typical rapper bravado, that's for sure. It feels like he's going deeper, trying to understand the world on all these different levels, from the microscopic to the cosmic. It's pretty amazing.
And that brings us to another thing that makes his style stand out. The complexity of his rhymes. It's like he's trying to fit as many rhymes as possible into every line.
He practically says that in one song, doesn't he? Something like, you need 10 times the enzymes to process one of my rhymes. Who even comes up with that kind of wordplay?
Or how about this line? Wordologically, my syllable position is beautiful. He's even making up words just to keep the rhyme going. It makes you wonder, what effect does that have on the listener, Is it impressive, or does it become too much?
I guess it depends on the person, right? Some people might find it off-putting, like too much to handle.
But for others, that might be part of what they like about it. It's like solving a puzzle, figuring out all the layers of meaning in these really dense rhymes.
It definitely shows off his skills with language. There's no doubt about that. He's a master wordsmith, for sure.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears a bit, talk about all the different references he uses. It's like he's pulling from every corner of pop culture, history, science, everything.
It's incredible. I was making a list while going through the archive. You've got pop culture icons like Schwarzenegger, Michael Jackson, historical figures like Ali, even Bugsy Siegel.
And it's not just names. He'll drop in philosophical ideas, references to different religions, even scientific theories. It's wild.
It's like this giant tapestry woven together from all these different threads. So what's the deal with all that? Is he just showing off? Or is there a deeper reason for all these references?
I think it adds another whole dimension to his work. He's not just rapping about his own life, but placing himself in this much larger context, connecting his experiences to history, culture, ideas.
It's like he's saying, hey, there's this whole world out there, and I'm going to show you how it all connects.
Yeah, and it challenges the listener to do the same, to make those connections, see the world in a wider way.
It makes you want to go down your own rabbit holes, right? and learn more about the things he's talking about.
Exactly. It's not passive listening. It's an invitation to explore.
And one thing you can't miss when you listen to Canibus is his strong sense of self. He's not afraid to say, I'm the best, even if it comes across, well, a little arrogant sometimes.
It's a bold persona, that's for sure, especially in the world of hip-hop. Lines like, "You're whack because I say so," or "Poet laureate is reserved for the name G." There's definitely no lack of confidence there.
And then there's, you ain't better than me, you just got an obsession with me. So is this just typical rapper braggadocio? Or is there something more to it?
I think it's interesting to consider how that self-assuredness fits into hip-hop culture as a whole, you know? It's a genre that's often about self-promotion, pushing boundaries. So maybe this is Canibus, playing with those conventions, even subverting them in a way.
So maybe he's not just boasting,
Mm-hmm.
but making a statement about his artistic vision, his belief in himself.
It forces us to think about the role of ego in creativity. You know, does a certain level of confidence, even arrogance, fuel innovation, groundbreaking work?
That's a great question. It's that fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
And where an artist falls on that line is subjective, I guess.
Definitely. Now, another theme that pops up a lot is his focus on money and materialism. He's very open about wanting wealth and success.
Yeah, lines like, everything we do is connected with getting paper, or need to get smarter and try to holler at the rookies, and don't even think about trying to dim and get shining. He's not exactly subtle about it.
It makes you wonder, right? Is this about his own ambitions, a commentary on society's values, or even a critique of the music industry itself?
I think it's probably a mix of all those things. Maybe on a personal level, he's expressing that desire for financial security, which is tough for a lot of artists. But I also get the sense he's using these themes to explore, like, the complexities of American culture, where money and status seem to be everything.
You've got a point there. It's a good reminder that artists aren't separate from the world they live in. Their work is always going to be shaped by what's happening around them.
For sure. Things get a little trickier, though, when we look at how he talks about women in relationships.
Yeah, this is definitely an area where we got to be careful. Some lines, like, "I love a fine hoe," or "passing the bottle," speaking Japanese, like "nomi masho," are definitely provocative.
And then there are some that are even more explicit and potentially offensive, honestly. It raises questions about how he views women, relationships in general.
It's crucial to remember that we're examining this in the context of his art. We got to consider the cultural climate at the time, the conventions of the genre, and the overall message he's trying to get across.
That's true. But even within that context, it's hard to ignore how some of these lines could be harmful.
It's a tough balance. We can appreciate the artistry of something without condoning harmful or disrespectful attitudes towards any group. And it's important for listeners to keep that distinction in mind, to engage with these lyrics critically.
So, big picture, what stands out to you the most so far in this deep dive?
Honestly, just how dense and multi-layered his lyrics are. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. Every layer you find something new and interesting. There's just so much to unpack here. And we've only just scratched the surface. It's true, every time you dig into these lyrics, you find something new. It's like he's leaving clues, you know, inviting us to follow his train of thought.
Yeah, and one thing that keeps coming up for me is how much he seems to be wrestling with, like, who he is.
Yeah.
You know, as an artist, as a person, there's this surprising vulnerability there, especially for someone who comes across as so confident, so tough.
It's a good reminder that even the most confident people, right, they have doubts, insecurities, and for artists like Canibus, those internal struggles often become like fuel for their work.
Yeah, like in one song he says, nowadays it's like I'm scared to be known, which is a pretty honest thing to admit, right?
Right.
Especially for a rapper who's often seen as being so in control.
It's a really interesting contradiction, isn't it? You have this lyrical warrior ready to battle anyone, and then you also have this introspective artist wrestling with these questions of identity and self-doubt.
It's like he's constantly searching for answers, not just about himself, but about his place in the world, you know? And he's not afraid to tackle big issues either.
Absolutely. There are lines where he talks about being disillusioned with, like, the state of things. He talks about rancid corporations being fake and how nobody ever gives you what they already didn't take. It's a pretty cynical view, but I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling sometimes.
Yeah, and he brings up historical events too, like the Tuskegee experiment, you know? He raps about Tuskegee Jesus versus a sneaky Tuskegee demon.
Yeah.
So he's clearly aware of those injustices, those inequalities, and he's not shying away from them.
It's clear that his music is more than just entertainment to him. It's a way for him to express his frustrations, challenge the status quo, make people think.
Right? It goes back to that lyrical warrior idea. But it's interesting. He doesn't just want to win, you know. He seems to really enjoy the intellectual challenge of it all.
He's constantly raising the bar, pushing himself, pushing the listeners to think harder, to engage more deeply with the lyrics. There's a line where he says, "100 bars ain't impressive to me." It's like he's saying, don't settle for mediocrity. Neither should you.
And he's not afraid to challenge the listeners directly either. He asks things like, do you know how to paraphrase? Do you even understand what the narrator is trying to say? It's like he's testing us, making sure we're paying attention.
He definitely doesn't want passive listeners. He wants us to be active, to participate, to unravel the meaning behind those complex rhymes and metaphors.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, if you're going to listen, you better be ready to think.
And that's what makes him such a fascinating artist. He's not just trying to entertain, but to engage on a deeper level, intellectually, emotionally.
Right, but even with all this talk of battle and intellect, there are those moments of vulnerability that really stand out. It makes him feel more human, more relatable.
You're right. There's a depth to his persona that goes beyond that image of the tough, invincible rapper.
Like when he talks about going through a long period of mourning and sadness when he was writing his song Stan, it gives us a glimpse into the person behind the lyrics, a reminder that everyone experiences pain and heartbreak.
And those experiences often shape their art, you know, in really profound ways. It's in those vulnerable moments that we can really connect with an artist on a deeper level.
Now, we've talked about the rhymes, the battle imagery, but one of the most interesting things about Canibus is how he mixes science and the supernatural in his lyrics. It's mind-blowing and thought-provoking at the same time.
It's like he's building a bridge, you know, between the world of science and the realm of the unknown. It reminds me of Carl Jung's idea of synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that we can't explain with logic.
That's a great comparison. It's like he's trying to make sense of the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah.
Using both science and intuition.
It's a very unique approach. He's not afraid of paradox, of seeing the connections between things that seem completely different.
And it creates this really cool blend of realism and mysticism in his music. Like he's saying, there's more to reality than we see. And I'm going to use my lyrics to open your mind to those possibilities.
I think that's one of the things that makes his music so captivating. He's not giving us answers. He's asking questions, prodding us to think differently about the world.
And it's not just the lyrics. It's the music itself, too. The beats, the flow, the way he uses those things to create a mood and atmosphere. It all adds to the impact of his work.
Absolutely. His musical choices often reflect the intensity of his message, the rawness, the energy of his sound. It pulls you in. And his flow is so precise, almost surgical. It's like he's dissecting words, syllables, rearranging them into these intricate patterns.
It's a style that's both captivating and challenging. And it fits perfectly with the complexity of his lyrics.
Speaking of complexity, as we go deeper into this lyrical labyrinth, have you noticed any recurring motifs or symbols, things that might give us more insight into his artistic vision?
There are a few that come to mind. One's the image of the labyrinth itself. He actually mentions it directly in some songs.
The labyrinth is a powerful symbol. It represents the human mind, you know, the winding paths we have to navigate to find meaning and truth.
It's like he's inviting us to go on a journey with him, through the labyrinth of his thoughts and experiences, to explore the hidden depths of his creative process.
And to embrace the challenge of that journey, the exploration, getting lost and finding our way again. That's all essential for growth and transformation.
Another motif I keep seeing is the serpent. He uses it in so many ways. Sometimes it's about wisdom, other times it's about temptation or danger.
The serpent is such a complex symbol. It has a long history in mythology, religion. It often represents that duality of human nature, the struggle between good and evil, wisdom and temptation.
It's interesting. In some Eastern traditions, the serpent represents Kundalini energy, that primal life force within each of us.
That's a fascinating connection. Maybe he's using the serpent to explore human potential, the light and shadow within us, that raw energy that drives us to create, to destroy.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask, do you think there's a single message, a unifying theme that ties all of Canibus's work together?
That's a tough one to answer. But if I had to choose one overarching theme, it would be the pursuit of knowledge, understanding. He seems to be constantly searching, expanding his own awareness. and challenging us to do the same.
I agree. He's not just entertaining us. He's educating us, provoking us, inspiring us to think critically, to dig deeper into the world around us.
Yeah, he's definitely in a league of his own. It's like he's a philosopher, but he's rapping instead of writing books.
Which leads to a big question, right? What is he actually trying to do with all this? Is it about entertaining people?
Yeah.
Educating them, provoking them, or is it all of those things mixed together?
I'd say it's probably a blend, you know? His music is definitely entertaining, no doubt about that. The rhymes, the beats, they all draw you in. But then there's this depth to his lyrics. It's not just surface-level stuff. He wants to make you think about complex ideas, challenge how you see the world. There's definitely an educational element there.
And we can't forget how provocative he can be. He doesn't shy away from controversial topics. He's pushing buttons, getting people to think about things they might normally avoid.
That's a big part of what makes him so interesting as an artist. He's a disruptor, shaking things up, making us confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about the world.
And in doing that, he's pushing us to question our own assumptions, to dig deeper, to search for a more meaningful understanding of everything. He's not handing us the answers, but he's giving us a lot to consider.
That's the sign of a true artist, right? Not just reflecting the world, but actually changing it through their creativity. In Canibus, he definitely does that.
Absolutely. So, as we're wrapping up this deep dive into Canibus's lyrics, I gotta say, I'm left with a sense of awe, you know? The brilliance, the complexity of his work, it's really something.
It's been quite a journey, right? It's given us a whole new appreciation for the power of language. Words can be weapons, tools, bridges to a different way of seeing things. Canibus shows us all of that.
He really does. But I'm also left with a question I think it's worth thinking about as we continue to explore his music on our own. Given how deep and intricate his lyrics are, is Canibus ultimately a visionary? Like a philosopher who chose to rap, dropping wisdom in his rhymes?
That's a great question, and honestly, I think it's one that each listener has to answer for themselves. There's no easy answer with an artist like Canibus. He makes you think.
Definitely. But one thing's for sure, his music is an experience. It challenges us, makes us question things, and helps us engage with the world in a more meaningful way.
Absolutely. And on that note, I encourage everyone listening to dive into Canibus's work, explore his albums, try to unpack those rhymes. Let his words spark your own journey of discovery. It's an adventure worth taking.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.